I am so excited for this next show. We are doing a Untamed book discussion, and I've brought into the conversation 3 women who are going to join me today. Actually, it's the evening, but we had to get all our schedules together, and the evening was the most available for everyone. So it is an evening podcast. Most people have other people in their homes, so just be aware of that if you're catching this and you're hearing something weird in the background. But we are doing a book discussion on Glennon Doyle's Untamed. I have read this book twice. Both times, I was shocked. I was shocked and shaken to my core. Each time I read it, the shaking went a little deeper. It was just so profound. This book, this woman, and tonight we are going to discuss what is in here and the pure gold, the beauty, the unlearning of what we have known to be our society, how we should be as women, how we should behave, act, how we should hold ourselves in the world. She asks us to break out of the cage, to leave the cage and to move on to a life where we can trust ourselves. That's really what this is all about. Trusting ourselves, learning how to connect to who you are, who you were meant to be. Join me and Leah, Anita, and Anna as we share together our experiences, our journeys. It's going to be vulnerable. It's going to be raw. It's going to feel intimate because these women are willing to share some of the sacred spaces of their soul's journey. And I have the privilege of doing the show with them. How exciting. So let me welcome my next guests on the Lori Clark Show. Maybe we could start by sharing just how did it strike you when you read it? Were you just like dirty pink bunny and a cheetah in a cage? How does this work?
I guess for me, I had no idea what to expect. And it just sort of shook me a little bit, or sort of got me a little bit nervous. Like I was like, oh, this is going to be really interesting. You know, it sort of set the stage for something, untamed, something kind of powerful that was going to grow. And just such a great way to just right off the bat be like, this is something to think about. So it sort of just set the mood, I guess, for me.
I think that is really important because the way she describes it, it's so visceral. You feel all of it. You do feel like there's something that's kind of like mysterious, or what is she going to do? What are we going to talk about that's so untamed? And what could I as a woman possibly have inside of me that's untamed?
I've been to South Africa and I've been to Kruger Park on a safari. And I feel like that's kind of where it took me, was that I've also been to an Aldergrove Zoo. And so when you think through where an animal should be living, it's obviously in Africa, in the wild. And I think I was just able to put myself in the mindset of what it would feel like after watching those animals, even the ones that were lazing about on a hot, sunny day, just enjoying what should be theirs in that environment, versus Tiger King and the beginning of COVID and that situation. And so I think there was just a lot to unpack in that, and in thinking through, like, what are we born to do and where has the world told us to become, and are we who we should be?
Right. That is really important. I think that's the question that we can all lead with, which is, after Anita goes, That's the question. Are we all who we should be?
I was really excited when I read that, just because I thought I read a lot, and more kind of books like this. I'm not a big fiction reader per se. So I was actually really excited because I was like, oh, thank God somebody's going to be real, because I like to read books about people that are raw and that are real, because I think there's enough, I don't know how else to put it, but enough BS out there, and people that aren't real, and people that say what you want to hear and tell you what they think you want to hear and all of that sort of stuff. So it was just, I was really excited when I read it, because I thought, okay, great. We're going on a journey, and it's going to be a real journey, and it's going to be one that's going to make me think, and it's going to make me want to take pause. And the people that are going to love the book like I do are going to be my tribe, so to speak. And the people that aren't going to like the book, so to speak, it's not that they necessarily aren't my tribe, but they may not be where I'm at on the journey or on the road. And I loved your stuff about Africa, because I have been to Africa too, and I thought those same things. And I thought about how we do so much to fit in versus being our true authentic selves. And I personally am one that rocks the boat a little bit, because I strive for authenticity, and I'm, a lot more spontaneous and stuff like that. But in the same token, I'm in so many ways, I'm very brave, but in the same token, there's a lot of vulnerability there that only certain people get the opportunity to see. Does that make sense? It's because a lot of people are like, wow, you're just way out there. And it's like, no, you may think I'm way out there because I'm way out there compared to most. But in the same token, there's always something that's reserved for me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And it also sounds like you've been on a journey, like by you reading books like that.
Yeah, but I love, like I said, and I thought it was interesting too, which I'm kind of jumping ahead, is that she's friends with Elizabeth Gilbert, who I loved her work. And so I was like, oh, wow, of course, because people find like people. And when you find people and I was thrilled when I read that, because she was talking about Liz all the way through. And I'm like, who's this Liz? And then I was like, oh, I know Liz. And because she also writes in that very raw, very real way. And as they're both kind of boat rockers in the sense that they kind of go on their own journeys about finding their authentic selves, and not only finding them, but having the courage to be their authentic selves, even though it rocks the boat of everyone around them. Which I thought was really good.
Yeah. And you've said so many things there that are really, really important. And isn't that what the breaking out of the cage is? That's like the biggest thing that we can do for one another, is to share what you've all shared and realize, oh my gosh, I know you, but you don't know each other. Yeah. And you all can say, yeah, we have something in common. We value this. We showed up here. We are all levels of boat rockers at different periods in our life. And this is one way that you are going to disturb a piece of your life. And I was saying to this person today, not only am I disturbing my life, but I'm disturbing my daughters and my sons and their children if they have them, because this is what change does. It becomes the effect. And when you get a raw story like Elizabeth Gilbert or Glennon Doyle, you immediately go, I have to have more of this. I have to have more of this. In the prologue, she says, at the very end, she says, then she'd look back at the cage, the only home she's ever known. She'd look at the smiling zookeepers, the bored spectators, and her panting, bouncing, begging best friend, the lab. She'd sigh and say, I should be grateful. I have a good life here. It's crazy to not long for what doesn't even exist. I'd say, Tabitha, you're not crazy. You're a goddamn cheetah. So just, pop up when you want to say the answer to this or whatever. But she leads with sparks, which I thought was interesting, because spark is sort of, for me, it it made me think of the first time in my life where I went, oh, there's something better here. Oh, I was made for something bigger. Oh, I think I have, what's happening? What thoughts I'm thinking? What things are interesting me? What am I reading? What am I doing? I want something. And there was this flame that lit, and it came from a spark of all of those things. For each of you, where did that happen for you?
For me personally, it was more of me learning to be caged, so to speak. I remember when I was 10, which I think I told you this story, Lori. I was 10 and I was quite athletic when I was young. And so we had this thing at school before they gave everybody ribbons at sports days, for participating. This was actually the winners and, first, second, third, that kind of thing. And anyway, I was a good athlete, and I was never in your face. Hey, I'm better than you. I was never one of those kind of kids. But I was really proud of myself because I was a really good athlete. And so I remember distinctly in grade 5, 2 things happened on a sports day. Is I would always be first. Like, I grew up in a small rural school. So let's put precedence here. It wasn't like 2,000 kids. There was like 300 kids in the whole school. It wasn't that big. Anyway, I used to get first in every event and in my age category every single year. And so when they would give a red ribbon to the first in blue, and then a yellow ribbon. And anyway, I remember in grade 5, because all the way along, it was just in my mind, it was just kind of a given. This is what you do and you're good at it. And it was like, I owned it and I was proud of it, but I wasn't boastful or a jerk about it or anything else. Anyway, I remember my girlfriend, who was one of my closest friends, asked me if I would fall down so that she could win just once. And I remember being a little kid and I was just kind of like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, and the thing that struck me was not bad. It was just, you're asking me to be less than I am so that you can win, was the first thing. And later, literally within hours, it was like a really hot June day and my parents were there and everything else. And I was wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. And so after every event, they wouldn't do it at the end of the day. After every event, they would pin a ribbon on you. And so you'd have 10 events, you'd have 10 ribbons across your chest. And that's what everybody did. They pinned them to their chest. And I had a chest full of red ribbons. And I remember my dad went to the car and got my coat and he gave it to me and he said, here, put your coat on because you're making the other kids feel bad. And I remember being and he wasn't a jerk about it, but it was his, because he was big, kind heart. And he was just like, honey, he said, the other kids are going to feel really bad because you've got all these ribbons. And I remember for the first time being like, okay, for you to be kind of accepted, and my intention was never to make anybody else feel bad. Like, that wasn't why I did it. And it was like a 10-year-old, it wasn't even a thought process that I'm trying to be, in your face, I'm better than you or anything else. But all of a sudden it was like, oh, you've got to dial you back so that other people can feel okay in that space. And it wasn't until years later and that sort of thing, I remembered that story, because honestly, I forgot about it for years, that you kind of unpacked that. And I was like, that was the first time that I felt like I had to put myself in a cage so that other people would be okay with me being larger than life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that makes sense.
My first thought about the story you just told was, I wonder if anyone would say that to a little boy.
Oh, that's good.
My first thought, nobody asks a boy to dim themselves down. They expect them to win every blue ribbon.
Yeah.
Very true.
And then my other thought was, did you feel, what an awful place to be put in that your friend asks you to be less than what you are, and then you have to feel guilty.
Yeah.
When you choose yourself at 10, 10.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, and I remember it was kind of it just struck me. It wasn't like I was sad or, you're 10, right? So you're not even really thinking about stuff. You're just kind of in the moment, just doing your thing. But it wasn't until afterwards that it was like, wow, it never even occurred to me that I was making other people feel bad, because I was just being me. I was just, you do you and I'll do me. And I was just doing me. And I wasn't really, like I said, and not to be rude, but I really wasn't thinking of anybody else. I wasn't trying to make them look bad or feel bad or whatever. I was just trying really hard to do my very best. And my very best made other people feel bad. and less than. And I was like, that just made me feel so bad inside and so guilty. And then it was like, after that, it was like, oh yeah, dial that back, because my intention was never to hurt anybody.
Anita, how did that play out in your later years? So were you pushing yourself down or dumbing yourself down, suppressing yourself
still to this day, like, it's funny because I got an award at work last year. My sister came to visit me and I had the award sitting in my office. She goes, oh my God, like, I didn't know about this. And I said, oh yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I got it. And she's like, why didn't you tell me? Like, that's fantastic. Like, good for you. And I said, what am I going to say? Hey, yeah, I'm really good at what I do. Like I said, and she kind of laughed, and I said, because I said, at the end of the day, I said, it doesn't really like affect anybody but me. And I said, I felt really good about it, but I just didn't really feel the need to share. And she was like, oh, that's really sad. I would have been your cheerleader. And I said, well, you're always my cheerleader. And I just kind of like brushed it off, but it wasn't like, because people post a lot on social media as, hey, look at me, rah, rah, rah. I don't post a lot of that stuff on work. And I know for a fact that I don't dim myself like I used to, but I don't necessarily kind of voice my accolades or voice my wins and that sort of thing to anybody.
Does that only happen for you when you are in a work environment, or does that happen like in other personal, private things?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's like I said, when I'm doing really well in my life, whether it's, and all those things, like, yeah, I don't have a tendency to share. Like, I'll share. I mean, trust me, as you guys are learning, I'm pretty much an open book. But it's not that I don't share, because I'm a really big sharer. But in the same token, but in the same token, I'm not one that's like, hey, rah, 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 I'm doing really well, whether that's with money or with work or even with relationships. Like, it was funny, I was telling a couple girlfriends about how Lori and I met a while ago, and I was just kind of like, yeah, I met this girl, and it was really cool, and that kind of thing, versus me being how I was just like, wow, it was just kind of serendipitous. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's always just kind of, and I kind of read the room and I test the room.
Right.
And sometimes, to be honest with you,
you see who's going to fan the flame. You see who's going to fan the flame.
And I'm selective in who I share things with for the most part, because I know that there's certain people that are going to be like my girlfriend. So I just don't even talk about it. It's kind of, and it's not like it's a forbidden subject, but it's like, I just don't say when things are going really fantastic in my life. And then there's other people that I share it with, and, and they're all who's like, yeah, my cheerleaders, but I'm very selective about my cheerleaders.
Anna, do you have anything to say about when that spark happened for you?
Sort of a different, don't know necessarily if it was a spark, but it was a bit of a shock for me. I was in my early 20s when I moved to Melbourne to do a work exchange with another graphic designer. And I was on Gumtree, their Craigslist, trying to look for a place to live. And I found these three men around my age, friends that all had a house together. So I moved in with these guys and spent 6 months living with them. And it was great, had a really lovely time. Kind of clashed on a couple of things with regards to, they were sort of homebodies and I really wanted to explore and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of my time with them, they were all pretty outgoing and they would occasionally have parties and that sort of thing. And I had a hard time kind of really connecting with their group of friends. And I found myself quite shy in a lot of situations. And I remember asking them at the very end of my time with them, how was I as a flatmate? How did you perceive me? I'm never going to see you guys again. What's the deal? And I remember one of them saying to me that when my antisocial state came off as arrogance, and that they thought that I was above them, or that, when I didn't have something to say, or when I was quiet, it was because I didn't want to contribute. And it really hit me because it was the first time that I've ever been told something that I had no awareness whatsoever that I was coming off that way. And it's sat with me since then, this sort of understanding of how we translate ourselves with others, especially in particular, like realms of being shy or quiet can come off entirely different when really you're the one sort of struggling to be like, man, what can I say? Oh, I don't know if I really want to say anything, and that's always been, I'm not going to say it's something I've struggled with, but it's been something that's sat with me throughout my 20s. And now, I'm in my mid 30s, just sort of not always knowing if you can entirely be yourself, because either from a shy standpoint or from a really outgoing standpoint, and trying to remain sort of true to who you really are, even if the miscommunication is there. And it's come up a couple of times in different ways. And I think that's one of the biggest things. It's not really a spark, but it's this idea of not really realizing how you're being perceived. And I think that, and whether that kind of puts you in a certain position and stops you from wanting to kind of be yourself or whatnot, or that's been kind of an interesting sort of stage, I guess.
So then how do you move through that? Like, what do you tell yourself?
At the end of the day, I'm like, if people don't get me, they don't get me. And, I've got, that's happened in a couple of different ways with a few different people. And I have a couple of really close girlfriends that are like, no. Don't even think that for a second. And so generally, it's just a reminder of like, we all communicate in different ways. And there's some that, that understand us and others that don't. And to just keep moving forward, really.
I find it interesting. It sounds like where both experiences have resulted in a change of behavior. Mm-hmm. Like you change who you are because, Anita, that wasn't acceptable. You were supposed to push down your exuberance and your amazingness. And Anna, you were not being enough just for, and your silence, it didn't sound like from your story that there was any curiosity about who you were and why you were quiet. It's just more like, change who you are. We're all these, and this is who, and if you're more like us, then we'll all get along. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? Leah, anything?
I'd say for myself, there wasn't like a defining moment that I can think back to. I would say that my parents separated when I was 2, and I have a 2-year younger brother. Mm-hmm. And so he was always the person making the noise and creating the scenes. And I was always the child that was aware of how annoying everyone was finding him. And so I think even from a very young age, I was just aware of how all adults were perceiving him and I. And so when we would be invited out for places, like my brother would order a steak and a pop, and I would order a side salad with a water, not because I cared about my weight, but because I was aware that people had to pay for me. Like I was always aware of what I was taking from other people, or just aware of the situations that were happening around, and how could I be less annoying almost as a child, which is not the way you want to feel as a child. Right. That you're always in the way, or that you're scuttled back and forth between your parents who obviously have issues because that's why they're not together. Yeah. So I would say that my personality has been defined by figuring out what people in a room are wanting and having the ability to listen to other people. And I've gotten a lot of praise for that in my life, is what a good listener I am. I don't talk a lot about myself. I feel very uncomfortable opening up because that's just not the place that I've been given. I'm a listener usually. Yeah.
So then in your life now, when you read this, how have you changed that? So you're so conscientious. So then you push down your desire that you have. So you would go more the opposite way of going, well, I don't want to impose.
Yeah, I would say it's been really interesting because I almost have an opposite personality at work. So I have a home personality, which is very appeasing, very quiet. And then I have a very loud, aggressive, or assertive. I'm trying to change my wording, assertive personality at work where I do enjoy awards. I do enjoy, it's almost like validation of the hard work that I'm doing. But I would say I've paid a lot of attention to the way that I have raised my child because she's very loud. And so I don't want to dim her light and tell her to like calm down and keep quiet. Right. That's not her. Like she is a show choir, tap dancing, like tornado of a human, which is not my style. But I don't want her to dim down because I'm not that way. So I think that's almost the way that I've trying to figure out more how to bring who I am at home and who I am at work closer together because both parts are who I am.
You know, it's interesting because when I was reading this first section, I started laughing because I imagined myself, you know, all of us kind of in a cage. And then, you know, there's this, someone has come and offered you a key and you take the key, you open the cage yourself, right? Because you have to do everything yourself. And the door opens and you run out. And then when an experience happens where, you know, you don't know what to do, you run back to one of the bars that you broke and you hold it in front of your face and you imagine yourself in the cage all over again. And you don't realize you can just like put it down. It's just a bar. You're not in the cage. And so often, I think what you're all saying is there's so many times where you go back and forth between the cages. There's not just one cage. There's like the cage of emotion, the cage of, you know, in her case, sexuality and religion, and the cage of, you know, body wellness and all kinds of places where some of us will never unlock all those moments for ourselves, you know?
Maze of cages.
What did you say?
It's like a maze of cages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's almost your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is the cage, which is so awful. It's like, this is what I know is really easy to deal with. So let me just climb back on in there. And you're like,
and just when you get comfortable there, then all of a sudden you turn a corner and it's like relearning what you already know, but you've kind of become complacent about it all. And then it's like, okay, let's just take one more step around this corner because then it's like, wow, a whole new world. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, remember what it was back there. And that's why it's kind of like a maze of cages. Is every time you turn a corner, there's another cage that you didn't even know you were in until somehow the light bulb goes on and it's like, oh my God, like I thought I was done with all this. And it's like, yeah, but that's part of the journey of discovery, right?
It is. And again, it's like where we go, I should be grateful. I have a good life here.
Yes.
Let's not get crazy, people. Let's not get crazy. She says on page 4, 10 is when the world sat me down, told me to be quiet, and pointed toward my cages. These are feelings you are allowed to express. This is how a woman should act. This is the body you must strive for. These are the things you will believe. These are the people you can love. Those are the people you should fear. This is the kind of life you are supposed to want. Make yourself fit. You'll be uncomfortable at first, but don't worry. Eventually, you'll forget you're caged, and this will soon feel like life. And I think that has really been the beauty of this discovering here. She says, I understand myself differently now. I was just a cage girl made for wide open skies. I wasn't crazy. I was a goddamn cheetah. It's really cool because this pink bunny thing that she leads out with, that you think about the beauty of a pink bunny and what it means. I was thinking about my kids, and when I had each of them, we gave them a little stuffed animal, and it was this thing that's supposed to soothe you and warm you and hold you, and it's your thing. And I think, in part of this dirty pink bunny is a real symbol of some of the things that we hold on to quite strongly, and that represent the chasing after that normal, not rocking the boat, like you said, Anita. I just chased after what would never rock the boat. So I just didn't say I was successful. I just didn't say that I had won, and I just didn't talk about my accomplishments. But then where's the pride, the healthy pride?
Yeah.
Well, and that's where it's like a select few I share that with, and I share different wins, but I don't share all of it. Well, I mean, I share it with my husband, but not my last husband, but this husband. But that was part of it. It was the fact that I shared it with me, and I would do my own little victory dance and my own little happy party and stuff, because then I could truly feel grateful and victorious and proud and all those things, because my victory and pride and gratitude didn't hurt anybody else.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It just makes me so sad, because I know that that's not just you. Yeah. Like, how awful to think that other people would feel bad because you were being the best version of yourself. Like, it just...
Well, and it was, don't get me wrong. I'm not a wallflower by any stretch of the imagination. But in the same token, there's certain things. And I do, I admire you when you talk, both of you talked about being very observant and listening and some of that sort of stuff, because I do that, but I do that in a very different version, because I will say things and then I will look to see the reaction, because it's like, okay, Anita, you're being a little bit too big for everybody. Does that make sense? Is because I am that loud, outgoing personality. And it's kind of like, okay, you're suffocating everybody else in the room because you're just being you. So then I will be, okay, I'll just dial it back a little bit. And so I monitor all that stuff all the time, it can be exhausting. So it's when my tribe, my close people, when I can just be me, it's like such a relief.
I love loud people, because they seriously release a lot of pressure for me. I feel like Anna would agree with me here. Like, when somebody's willing to take the limelight off of me, like, please do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I will run with it quite often, but then I find myself being, all of a sudden it'll be like, I'll be the first one, running and woo-hoo, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, whoa, okay, is this you being you, and are you making other people feel bad, or am I stealing the light from you, or am I making you feel less than because I'm brighter than, and all of that sort of thing. So then I'll stop myself and I'll be like, okay, you need to dial it back. And then I'll be like, then I'll consciously make the choice and say, hey, so how are you feeling? Like, do you think, is it just me that thinks this is a really great idea, or how are you feeling about that? And I'm very much a leader, so I just will kind of take things and run with them. But it's also, like I said, being conscious about and kind of weighing out those, I don't know how else to describe it, but the power in a relationship, that push and pull and the back and forth, and making sure that it's an even balance and I'm not kind of overpowering or overbearing. And yeah, it's a bit of a juggling act. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, the self-doubt, though, that's the thing that she's addressing here. It's really the next piece where she's asking us, and honestly, I've read the book twice, but I haven't really until today kind of just perused her stuff or other work. So I feel kind of like, should have probably done that. But anyway, she's an amazing person. And I really think in this book, if I was to sum up this book, I would say she's asking us to trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
Like, that's it. If you want to be untamed, then learn how to trust yourself and stop trying to be good, because good isn't, who cares? And what happens, to you and to all of us here, our voice the voice that we were given diminished. So what happens to each of you, or I'm just put the question out and maybe anybody can respond. We don't have to go around if you don't want to, but when did you find your voice then? Because these are really, pivotal things that happen in life, where I think for Anna, you would be the person who had something happen maybe more in your 20s, but then that's maybe almost worse because then you're really like, this is the first time someone who's lying to me. Like, where am I going here? And so when did you find your voice, and what did this do to amplify it?
I'll start. I have always journaled. I've journaled since I was 8 years old. And I think reading back on my journals, even now, super embarrassing. And also, they're very cyclical. Like, you can see a pattern of, like, I would meet a guy, I would do like X, Y, Z, and X. Like, it just kept going. So it was time for me to take a good hard look at me. Yeah. And I think that when I started realizing that I would ask people what their opinions are, or they would ask me. And I've read a few books too, where why are you asking someone else for your roadmap when they have no idea? Like, what Anita is going to say works for her is certainly not going to work for me in this moment. And what works for Lori isn't going to work for Anna. So it's almost like, I guess, just really sitting in what Glennon said is your knowing and that inner voice inside your head. And I've also read a few books around The Untethered Soul is one where it teaches you that the voice inside your head is not you. And so how do you stop thinking that the voices are, first of all, they're not kind to you. If they were your best friend, would they still be your best friend? Because they say very, very mean things a lot of the time. And so it's calming that voice down and really sitting in like a meditative state and figuring out who you are and what you do bring to the world, because that's when you get to shine. And that's when you stop looking at all of your faults and you start looking at all of your strengths and what you have to offer. I think that's when you feel more authentic, and not in a cocky way, but more in a, this is who I am. And this is why the people in my life really love me and appreciate me. This essentially is my why. And so I'm comfortable in that at this point. And I think that people speak about it more now. Mm-hmm. And even conversations like this just get you a little bit closer to who you're meant to be, and that who you are is a good person. And so I will keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Well, and that's great, right? Because you're right about that. When you found your voice, Leah, when you're talking about your past experience about, I was a kid and I would order the salad and the water and this and that, and my brother was more out there and I was just so conscientious. Did you find your voice about that? Did you find a voice that said something different?
I would say that I'm more comfortable with internal validation and I don't seek external validation anymore. So wow. I don't necessarily set all the proper boundaries that Brene Brown has taught me, but I'm aware of the boundaries. And I'm comfortable, honestly, exiting relationships at this point that aren't furthering my growth. And I think that every day when you wake up and you want to be a better version of yourself, you're naturally going to gravitate and find people that are also on that journey. And I think it's been saying goodbye to the people that aren't on that journey and wishing them well and being okay with the fact that they're not going to be a huge player in your life anymore. And then finding people that are like-minded or challenging you, because I do appreciate different opinions as well. Just internal validation, I would say, versus external validation.
Very cool.
Yeah, definitely.
internal validation versus external, because I have a saying that if you aren't paying my mortgage, you don't get a vote. And
right.
Yeah. And
we got to put that on the bumper sticker.
Because I've had some challenges and I'm divorced, et cetera, et cetera. And when I was at the scariest, hardest time in my life, I found everybody had their 2 cents, and I was really digging deep, and I had my face buried in the carpet on a regular basis, trying to figure out my way and my path. And all these people were full of opinions, but when I was really struggling, it was who was there to pick me up or to cheer me on, or, all of that sort of thing. And I realized that I still carried on the path that I thought I should. And then after the fact, all these people were like, oh, we knew you could do it, and way to go. And I called them on it. I called every single one of them, including my own mother. And I said, no, you did not. You were the first to A, B, C, D. And so after that, I just realized that it's not that I don't value other people's opinions, but 9 times out of 10, I only ask the opinion of the people that matter in that particular situation. And everyone says, oh, you make these really fast decisions. I actually am not a fast decision maker. I take months to make really big decisions, but I just don't share it with anybody because I don't want all the white noise about it, because they don't have a dog in the race. So it's like, if you walk the path, or I see something in you that I admire, that I would strive to be like, then I'll pursue you and I'll ask your opinion and find out how you got to where you are. But other than that, your opinion is, and it's not that I don't care, I do care, but it's not going to be a factor in making my decisions.
Have you heard the quote, "The Man in the Arena"?
Oh,
yes.
By Thomas Roosevelt.
In fact, that's funny. My husband actually used that to a friend of ours when we first started dating.
The Man in the Arena. Leah, are you going to read that, Leah?
I have it up if you'd like. I
would love you to read that. Let's hear that.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in the worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Amen.
Woo, I love that. That's beautiful. Yes. And the woman is in the arena.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Anna, anything?
I would say all of this chit chat made me think of one of the pages that I highlighted in the book, Let It Burn. She talks about, my goal is not to remain the same, but to live in such a way that each day, year, moment, relationship, conversation, and crisis is the material I use to become a truer, more beautiful version of myself. And that's really stuck with me lately. When we were talking about sort of external and external and internal validation, I have this interesting, I'm one of those people that doesn't suffer from FOMO. I've got a best friend who she just suffers so badly from it, and it drives me nuts, poor thing. That the external validation thing has not been something that's been a big issue of mine. I probably thank that to my parents. But the internal validation is what I'm having to work the most on, which is interesting because there are areas of my life where I believe I have a very good gut microbiome. Like, my gut lining is healthy because she is so strong in talking to me. I was talking to a few of my friends. I'm like, how's your gut? Because mine is like loud. And I do, in times in life when things have been hard, I have been able to lean on my gut and have made quite a few very big decisions very fast because that was really strong. And yet up here, that's a whole other battle. And I sometimes, as we all do, like really really lose the battle in so interesting to have so much confidence down in my tummy and not have the confidence up in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I, that her little quote there about my goals remain blah, blah, blah is, I think when it comes to finding my voice, I guess I'm not finding it, but it's just changing. It's just changing. And it's been changing a lot, obviously, probably for a lot of us in the last couple of years in particular. But transitioning from like kind of that strong voice in my tummy to that, what is this voice in my head and what is my relationship with her has been, it's been really interesting, very fulfilling, but also very difficult. It still is.
Read The Untethered Soul.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm going to read it. That's my next book. That's my next one. For me, it was people pleasing. Like I just knew at a very young age that I wasn't the person. I wasn't chosen. I never was chosen. I was not a very beautiful kid. I didn't look pretty. I wasn't pretty. And I was just an other in every single part of my life. I had an extreme learning difference. And there were so many other things that contributed to the breaking of my boundaries and the inability to understand who I was as a little kid. And that was probably around the same age as some of you and Glennon. She says 10. It was when I kind of started thinking about other things. I would say, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I could be this. And my brain kind of I expanded a little more. And that's when it was just like, yeah. And it was, you're too loud. You're too this. You don't question me ever. You don't question me. You don't question God. You don't question. You question, you're in trouble. And it was very authoritative and it was very heavy on the patriarch. And in my life, I just had to learn that, well, I barely learned it. And I'm learning to love myself, which I haven't ever done. So that's really uncomfortable for me. Just like it's the hot seat all day long. It's just hot, 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 hot. And like you, Anna, the self-talk in my head is the thing that is just slaying me. It's just killing me. And I've been taking some meditation time, and I was doing it twice a day because I just couldn't hold it. And I was just going, it was so hot that I just had to get that space and breathe. And now I find that the one thing that's helped me is the alignment of my own mind, my own body, and that knowing. And it just becomes this when I meditate. And it's just 15 minutes or whatever, but it's very, very helpful. Any other places for anyone that just really jumped out in the book?
Oh,
I loved when she talked about when she was talking, or Elizabeth Gilbert gave her the analogy when she was talking about going inside yourself and then weighing out the decision-making process. And does that feel warm to your soul or does that feel cold to your soul? And I loved that analogy because I very much filter lots of things through my soul and my guts and all of that sort of stuff. And I loved it because I love the analogy of, we have two kinds of feelings. Like we as North Americans have our million descriptions of our feelings because we always talk feelings, and I'm this and I'm that and I'm happy and I'm sad and I'm mad and I'm this and I'm that. But it's boils it down to two types of feelings. They're either yucky feelings or yummy feelings. And that's it. And when she said that, it's either it makes you feel warm or it makes you feel cold. And I love that because when you're kind of wrestling with some of those decisions. And I always go with my guts, but in the same token, it was just, I had to do a couple decisions in the past couple of weeks. And that was exactly what I thought. It was like, I need to cut through it all. Does this make you feel cold or does this make you feel warm? And that was it.
Oh. Yeah. How about you, Anna? Any other one other than Let It Burn?
I've got a few little highlighted and folded pages. Just another, when she's talking to Tish, they go through that little section in Talks where it's like 12-year-old me and then 12-year-old Tish and the difference between herself and her daughter. I thought that was really great. One of them is Tish says, Chase wants me to join the same club he joined in middle school. I don't want to. Me, so don't. Tish, but I don't want to disappoint him. Me, listen, every time you're given a choice between disappointing someone else and disappointing yourself, your duty is to disappoint that someone else. Your job throughout your entire life is to disappoint as many people as it takes to avoid disappointing yourself. Oh. And then I also love that Tish goes, even you? And she goes, especially me. That's that little like, oh, that was a good little cue. But that's like, what a powerful thing to say to your daughter, And I mean, it's just amazing. Love that.
I also thought that one was really important for me. But the other one, do you remember in the book where she talked about the boys and the girls in the room and the,
oh my gosh, yes.
Yes.
And how the girls looked at each other and to see whether they wanted to eat or not?
Yeah. I have it highlighted. She goes, the boys looked inside themselves. The girls looked outside themselves. And then she goes, we forgot how to know when we learned how to please.
God.
And that scenario. Oh.
But also the fact that they all did the same thing just teaches us that it's society that's made us like this.
Made us like that. And the cage part of it. I like how and I don't know if this has even come up in the book, so correct me, but there's some measure of restructuring love that I feel from this book, the Untamed version, because for her, she has, she left, her husband actually, I think, he had some issues. They were in therapy and there was a whole bunch of stuff. Like, her story is amazing, but she's talking about loving and falling in love with Abby and how that was for her such a big, huge, expansive moment where she's just standing there, her arms out, just like, hi. And the thing is that it really struck me that it sounds like she still loves her husband in the sense that he maybe not romantically and all of that, but it's definitely coming across like there's goodwill there. There's compassion, there's kindness, there's love. And it just made me think about, so many of us, how love is restructured for us and how, you divorce someone, you are estranged from someone. People come into your life as a love gift and they can leave too, and you can make this, like, love doesn't have to be
in a box
forever. Mm-hmm. I would prefer it. I've been married with Dave for 26 years and we have a great connection and I would love to see that happen forever. There's no desire on my side to move that in a different direction. But there are people in my life where love has been restructured and it isn't about, I don't love you. It's about, that was for a time. And that's okay. And she gives this permission to say, you trust yourself if you love someone, but you have to let them go because they are asking, they are telling you you're disappointing them too many times, then you can let them go and you can still love them and you can still appreciate that you had them. They served a purpose. However, they showed up for you, changed you, grew you, transformed you, and we can celebrate that. I was really taken by that.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not necessarily about the person, it's about your connection and relationship. And, I've another folded page, chapter lies. She says, my friend and I are lying on the couch, marveling, crying, and laughing about all we've let burn and rebuilt during the past couple of years. When I say, then I left my family, she stopped laughing. Don't say that. Don't say things to yourself that aren't true. You didn't leave your family, not for a single moment. You didn't even leave your husband. You left your marriage. That's it. And so I feel like,
wow,
she has been able to maintain this beautiful connection with her kids' fathers, her kid's father, outside of the marriage, because it was the marriage that wasn't bringing them, what they needed, or, it was at a time and then it changed. And I think, maybe that sort of speaks to what you're talking about. There's this, together they weren't suited anymore, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't meant to be in each other's lives. And I think that's the really sad thing about a lot of relationships is when they end, you think about all this time you've shared with someone, and just because you guys can't be together anymore doesn't mean that they have to leave forever.
They made, like those two in particular, I've read a little bit about them, and she got pregnant accidentally. So they made the best of that situation. He cheated on her. And so that's what they were going to therapy for. And then I think they obviously worked through it. But when they moved from Florida to California, they weren't moving without him. Like he came across all of America and he's still part of their family. And she's very comfortable saying that, like, Craig is our family. And I have this quote from her too that says, there's no set way to live, love, raise children, arrange a family, run a school, community, and nation. Norms were created by somebody, and each of us is a somebody. You are somebody and can make your own normal. You can throw out all the rules and write your own. You can build your life from the inside out. So stop asking what the world wants from you. Instead, ask yourself what you want from the world.
Wow.
Great.
That's really helpful because I didn't know that. So Leah, thank you for that because, but I get so inspired by people that sometimes I just choose to not dig further. I just get I don't want any outside voice. I just want the information that I'm receiving from like the joy of reading it. And I just find she is moving to a label and ripping the label and letting us go like this, right, Anita? Like we can just tear it up. We can look at the beliefs that we had as children or the religion that we grew up in and say, I trust myself enough. No, thank you. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty powerful.
It's really powerful. I had some circumstances in the past. I had a near-death experience. And then at that point in time, I went back and I literally was doing the whole, why am I here? What is my purpose? All those sorts of things. And I really dug deep and I decided that, okay, my life wasn't the way I wanted it to. And these rules were, or bullshit rules that I grew up with weren't serving me anymore. So I went back to the drawing board. And I remember I probably wrote 3 notebooks that year, and I'm not a journaler, but it was just my books of thoughts. And it was like, okay, so if time and money was of no consequence, what would your life look like? And this belief that you have, where does that come from? Is that something that you were raised to believe, or is that really your truth? Or is that a truth you were taught? Or is And I really ripped apart my life. And I ended up getting divorced, and I ended up moving, and I ended up getting a new career and the whole thing, because I said, no. If I've been blessed with a second chance, so to speak, I'm going to tear the walls of my world down, because my way, I had you have all these ideas, which, I mean, everybody does, that this is the, A plus B equals C. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I didn't want C, nor was I pursuing that, but that was everybody else's thoughts and beliefs about how to do this. And so I literally started reading and pouring through stuff. And I was just like, I'm going to dismantle my life, and I'm going to accept the responsibility that you do not have a freaking clue what you're doing. Otherwise, you would have this amazing, magical life, and you don't. So anytime I got to like A plus B, I would stop, because it doesn't equal C. I would add C equals J. And I would purposely do something totally different that I'd never done before, because I'm like, the whole definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I said, no. And so I did. And I did that with everything, with my friends. I changed a lot of friends. And it wasn't like you talk about evolving or redefining things. I redefined everybody and everything in my life. And there was a lot of people that were left behind. And not because I didn't love them anymore, but it was I loved me more, and they weren't adding to my journey, so to speak, or they were kind of, they were fantastic in my life at the time, but where I was going, they couldn't come with me, because I was moving in a different direction. And people aren't always really happy when you start making those kinds of changes. And that's a whole nother story. But yeah, very true about that whole loving people for who they are, not necessarily the cast that we're kind of creating.
Would you say that was a spark for you then? Oh, that sounds like that's like
it was big. It was pivotal.
I mean, near death experience is really that it's like you were going one way, and then you turned, and the idea of being hindered or inhibited or suppressed was no longer who you were.
Yes and no. My attitude was, you only got one kick at the cat. And so my goal was always, I'm going to nail that sucker to the wall. Like whatever it is, like whatever that looked like. And still, and I've since not done to that same degree, but I keep kind of revamping and redoing as I grow and evolve, because I never want to go back to that complacency again.
They say, she says in one of the sections here, actually, blowjobs. She says, she has these words that I just love, because it was actually really sad for me to read that. She went to her therapist with her husband, and to work on after he admitted that he'd been sleeping with other women. And so she went to the therapist, and she said, I've fallen in love. I'm wildly in love. Her name is Abby. The therapist's mouth falls open just enough for me to notice that. She says nothing for an eternal moment. And then she breathes very, very deeply and says, okay, Glennon, you know that whatever this is, it's not real. These feelings are not real. Whatever future you're imagining here, that's not real either. This is nothing but a dangerous distraction that won't end well. It has to stop. She then explains, but I cannot sleep with him again. You know how hard I've tried. Sometimes I think I've forgiven, and then he climbs on top of me and I hate him again. It's been years, and I don't want it to be difficult. So I close my eyes and try to float away until it's over. And this is still like, this is a therapist. So I'm not trying to judge, but I'm just saying, this is like where the beauty is here, right? This is where you empower someone and you listen to them. And instead, she said, well, Glennon, have you just tried to give him blowjobs instead? Many women find blowjobs to be less intimate. So not to live like you're saying, Anita, to live out of this oh my God, this truth, this spark, this beauty, I'm doing this. I've got a second chance. You said you just had a near-death experience. You almost died. You know how that works and you didn't go. So you stayed and now you're going to change the course of your life. She's in therapy, sitting there going, I need help. Help me unpack this. No, that's less intimate. Let's find something that's less intimate for you.
Well, and the thing is, what I realized was a really big deal to me really wasn't a big deal to other people. Like, it was huge in my life, but everybody else was kind of business as usual. And I realized that sometimes we go through these really big changes internally, or like we open our own cage and we come out and we're the, we're the cheetah saying, here I am, I'm roaring right now. And everybody else is like, oh yeah, pass the popcorn. I'm still going to carry on my life, what I'm doing.
Right.
And you realize that it's maybe really big for you, but it's not necessarily big for everybody else, which that's okay. But just realizing that too, because you kind of have to, when you go figure out your stuff. And I still, like, even rereading this book, it was just kind of like really ignited that, okay, I've got to revisit some of this stuff and, unpack the things that I haven't been true to in the last few years because I've kind of gotten complacent and comfortable and all of those things.
Can I just say that after listening to you read the last excerpt, I actually just thought through what a responsibility all of us have as the person listening and what advice we choose to give people. Because quite often in my line of work, people act like I am a psychologist or a therapist, which is not true. I can listen, but my advice is not in any way, shape, or form educational. But after listening to that therapist, I feel like I would do better than her. So maybe I should give it a shot. Because can you imagine being that person when someone just vulnerably for the first time says, I'm a lesbian and this all makes sense why I have not wanted my husband, which has felt like a war zone. And the person just goes, yeah, suck it up, give him a blowjob. Like,
I've been watching too many TikToks, but my response is immediately no. Immediately no.
Immediately no.
Immediately no. Immediately no. But where did she learn that? So right? Like, it's not. Then what is interesting here, and I'd love to hear Glennon talk about this, because my thought goes to, where did the therapist have, and why did she have that response? Like, what was it about that was not, she was not able to hear the need for the listen and the unpack and the connection piece? Like, why not honor this momentous moment for her?
And how many other people have been in that situation with a therapist who is somebody with a PhD, and their entire life has been derailed because they've just stayed in their cage based on that person's opinion for them?
I think I'm now trying to think about whether this is actually later on in the book or not. But I think she talks a little bit about women empowering women and how, the popular girl everyone hates, even though she's living her true self and she's trying to be bold and bright and pretty and do everything she wants to do. And maybe there's an element there of oh, wow, you're discovering more about your sexuality. You're taking these massive leaps, like, oh, don't do that, because we don't want the women in our lives to be lifted up. Or there's some sort of element there, right? Where I think it's in the book, or am I just thinking about this something randomly? But maybe there's that idea of kind of not only keep our cage, but sort of keep other ladies' cages, because
keep everybody small. It's better that way.
Very small, because the big bold girls that are doing different things are scary.
Well, also they were in Florida. So when you think about just politics or how people grow up in maybe more red states, maybe that's the way they were raised, is that That lifestyle might be wrong.
Or you're just putting a jacket over the ribbons. You're just putting a jacket on the ribbons and saying to your this person, pull it down so that no one sees that you're winning every race, that you're super athletic, and that you win at everything. That you're working your butt off in to pull yourself out of the gutter. You're working your butt off to become something. But now that you're becoming it, let's just tone it down. That to me is more like someone who has a negative self-narrative, who is listening to, trying to be active in someone's life, and their own private life has seeped in by accident. And how many of us are doing that? Like, it's just amazing to me. It's amazing to me. I don't quite know what to say about that. You know, I do know that I had an experience, and maybe it rubs me the wrong way. I think you're all going to tell me that it truly rubbed me the wrong way, that there's no maybe here. But I was raised to believe that I was not educated, that I was not able to be smart enough, that I was just, we're here. Everyone else is here. And that's okay for us. We've accepted it. So it kind of grates me because that's painful. The lack of acknowledgement is painful to someone. I can only imagine how Glennon felt in the chair going, but this is so real. Like her, I had a dream. I wanted to be a pediatrician. And I'm not saying that I'm not successful or that my career, you know, would have been better being a doctor. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying when you have something that you feel in your cells and you know from your knowing, as she talks about, that is true and right and honest, and it's there and it's bigger than anything. What's it to you that person does it?
You definitely need somebody to believe in you when you're younger, though. Like maybe not a parent, but you need a teacher. You need some figurehead that tells you that you can do it. Otherwise, you stop chasing your dreams when people just tell you that you can't do it when you're that young.
Then you lock yourself in the cage. You literally are free. You're out and you go and someone says, do you want to read a book? And you just go, no. And you turn around and go and walk in the cage and close the door. Mm-hmm. And I did that for decades. So I've got a lot of time to catch up. I'm catching up, everyone.
What do you think? This is just kind of a random question that just popped in my head. What would your life, and you don't have to share, but it's just a rhetorical question. What would each of your lives have looked like had you not been caged?
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
And it's not necessarily like you said, because that's deep and very personal, but it's just food for thought, because that was one of the questions that came to me in my mind when I was reading this is, had I not been, and I had more significant adults in my life that were positive influences and cheering me on, but had I not been caged, where would I be now versus where I am?
It's hard to even imagine, because who knows the people that you would have met on that different path that would have encouraged you to continue becoming the person that you wanted to be.
Regrets. I don't. I choose not to. I think everything has been divinely orchestrated, and the decisions that I made, I believe were blessed and carried me down the paths that I needed to go. But in the same token, it's more of a curiosity than a regret as to wondering what that would look like.
Mm-hmm.
For me, well, I didn't even know I had a cage. And I didn't know, I mean, there was no way. I was raised in a very, very religious family. I went to a Christian school. What cage are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, there's no cage here. I mean, it was just it was this cookie cutter where I wasn't slowed down enough to even know that there's this thing called a cage. I wasn't really taught that I could imagine. I wasn't taught that I could believe in the possibilities being endless. My own children know that, but I did not. I taught myself, and I didn't teach myself until I had my absolute spiritual awakening when I was 34. So everything from there to now is like all self-taught and hard fought, and is now I can see the cages. But Anita, when I was there, that was all I knew.
Mm-hmm. So you don't know what you don't know, right? And it's as you go on the journey, like I'm sure I'll look back 5 years from now and say, what the hell was I thinking in 2020?
Totally.
You know what I mean? Because, I really thought I had it going on 10 years ago. It's like, that's not necessarily the case. But
it's interesting though that you asked that question, and I love it so much because the real answer for me is, I think we're made to have cages. Because if there's no friction, then how do you know how to go higher? Where's your orientation?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know, the contrast, if you don't know that there's pain, then what is pain?
It's like, how do you know that chocolate ice cream is your favorite if you've never tried any other kind?
Well, you guys talk about Africa and I've never been. I have no idea.
Mm.
Yeah, but I still think that we don't need to be caged. Like, I don't think there needs to be a patriarchy that's working against like females or the rich working against the poor.
Yeah.
Right.
I still think we would struggle because we're humans. So we're going to make really bad choices and our hearts are going to break, and we'll learn from that. And spirituality, I think, is individual. And so that's always a journey and an individual journey, no matter how you're raised. And so I think that would create friction as well. But I just think that it would be a different world if little girls and little boys weren't told that they weren't allowed to do this or they can do this. Like, boys still aren't allowed to wear skirts. Why? Why is it weird?
Right. I agree with you.
Girls wear pants.
Yeah.
I feel like we fought so hard at the beginning. And so like as females, we have more ability, I guess, at this point to be more in men things. But I feel like because men didn't fight very hard, if at all, to try to be more feminine. And you almost see that fight happening now for them, where they're like, I want to play with a Barbie. I want to paint my nails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely, and that really hit a lot when she starts in the book, when she talks about, American boys being raised. That's something that, we're seeing more and more, as you say, these men's groups and that sort of, men wanting to be vulnerable. And, I don't think I folded the page. She talks about how, I think I did. She talks about how boys learn that they're, okay. I'll just read a little snippet of it. Men are caged too, The parts of themselves they must hide to fit into those cages are the slices of their humanity that our culture has labeled feminine. Traits like mercy, tenderness, softness, quietness, kindness, humility, uncertainty, empathy, connection. We tell them, don't be these things because these are feminine things. Be anything but feminine. And then it goes on to say the problem is that the part of themselves that our boys have been banished from are not feminine traits, they are human traits. Wow. And I have a large network of men in my life who, it's interesting that sort of 25 to 35, I'm only 34 now, so I can't really go beyond, that age where girls are learning a lot about themselves, they're supporting one another, they're going through these battles, they're breaking through. And I think right now, an even bigger tragedy is the men that are so far behind because
so far
they're not supporting one another and they're still, oh, dude, that's so gay. Why would you say that? Or like, what, you're crying? Like, don't be lame. That is still so much a part of like grown up men. And I see it all the time. And it's, I even have friends who are really struggling to find male companionship and they hang out with women more often because they're sick and tired of all this crap. And wow. I think that that's going to be a really, when she started talking about it in this book, it really hit home for me because I think that that's kind of the new, I'm not going to say it's new, but there's going to be a lot more focus now, I think, on bringing men forward to this age where they can just take a breath, and feel supported and be vulnerable and know that it's not feminine. It's just being human.
But I think that's also the way that, again, the patriarchy designed it. Like anything that is female is bad and you must banish it. Right. And so anything labeled anything feminine is like, stay away, you're gross, you're not a good man. And I do think that the boys of this generation, though, will start breaking through because of the parents at this point.
Yeah.
It's an amazing conversation. And I think that that's really appropriate. And I often wonder, like, why are men not, I don't hear from men on this book at all. I actually told a male friend of mine to read this book and I should have checked in with them on it. I'd love to have a conversation with more men because this is so essential. This is for humans. This is not just for women. From my relationship, I have two sons and I have a partner that I've been with known him for 30 years and loved him for almost 30 years. And I can just say that for a man to feel the weight of the family, like, why? There's all of these like crying or, when we do that well here, we try to do as best we can. But I see so many people who they're just so disconnected from that introspection and the leaning into the emotion. What she's asked us to do is look at emotion and lean in and not away. And that is the most beautiful thing ever, in my view. I love it. So as we wrap up, anything anyone wants to say at as a last sort of encouragement or something that's really stuck out?
I'd like to say that you've raised your boys very well. And they're emotionally in tune. I worked with both of them, just so you guys know.
Okay.
Lovely, lovely men, I will say.
I'm pretty proud of them. I am. And it makes my eyes water. I think for me, I was going through a really terrible time and they both just came and, they knew when to stand. They knew when to sit. They knew when to say that moment of encouragement, and they knew when to step back, but they also know how to articulate and surround themselves with this deep understanding. And to your point, Anna, I think that there's a change happening, because as women shift, we shift this intuitive power, this like we shift it, and then the men come alongside as well. But they're so used to being the guy on the wall, the guy in the guard, and the warrior king. And I am looking forward to more conversation in the day that we can actually, embrace these kinds of conversations and have 15 men sitting here going, oh man, this is where I was caged, because it's a very locked up, dissociative, like a dissociative thing. Don't think about this. And a lot of men are having anxiety now, I've noticed, along with females as well. It's just a very big human condition. But I think for the men in particular, it's been a big struggle, a big weight. So anything else?
How long do we have? No, I'm kidding. Because you know me, I love to talk.
This isn't coffee with me in 3 hours.
I know.
Oops, look at the time. Where the heck are we right now? It's dinner, and we were just there for breakfast.
No, I think it's amazing, and I think it's really important that you have, you've created a soft, safe place for everyone to be able to share with, which I think that's important. I don't think we do this often enough. I think that, and that's why I was certainly open, because it's like, I always love to learn and grow and hear other people's perspectives and their stories, because you don't know what you don't know, and what everybody brings to the table is different. And it just, thanks for having us and hosting us. And I loved it.
Good.
I love the book.
Well, I will do this again. I want to read Untethered Soul, Leah. I appreciate that. And maybe Anna, maybe we need to read that. And Anita, have you read Untethered Soul?
Yes, I have. It's Michael Singer. I'm staring at it right now on my bookshelf. It's fantastic.
Oh dear. Maybe we all need to meet again and debrief that book. But I think there's more books to be read and more things to be had. And I just think that I felt like, I just want to say thank you to all of you for stepping in and stepping up. And, this can be heard all over the world. And that is like, can strike fear into the core of most people, but, but not the three of you. And I think a small group is great because it's helpful. You can get that, that deep feeling of, and really dive into some of these places. But thank you for bringing us into these sacred things for you. Life is sacred. And I believe that these experiences that each of us have had are a sacred offering, not only to express them to others, but they're an encouragement back to us, a recycling of that, like, that's what happened. And then here's the jewel. And you were able to do that and articulate that today. And I want to thank Glennon Doyle for leading us to the Dirty Pink Bunny and what the cage looks like. And the words, I should be grateful. I have a good life here. I don't ever want to say that. I don't. What I want to say is, I am so appreciative that things are coming clearer for me every day. And I'm willing every day to keep showing up for all of the work I've put in, for all the work I'm going to put in. I'm going to rise every day. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to be appreciative. So thank you all. Thank you, Glennon. And thank you for joining me this evening. It's been a privilege. I appreciate each of you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing the work.